This is not the image from my mirrorless camera. This is. But I know, right? Welcome to the channel, and today we're looking at the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra, the next step in Razer's Kiyo series. But this next step is a gigantic leap compared to the other ones. Let's have a look in the box. In the box, you're gonna get the camera, a 1.5 meter braided USB-C to USB-A cable. I've always really liked Razer's cables, a lens cover, and you get all the supporting documentation. But let us just have a closer look at this camera itself. Look at how chunky this bad boy is. I'd say the first Kiyo was probably only this part here, and then the other ones were just a little bit thicker, but look at how big this is. Rather than use the lens cover to cover this up, because that's really only meant to protect glass here, if you just want privacy, you can just turn on your shutter, and then you have that privacy, so you don't have to worry about putting that lens cover on every time. So you have a typical looking mount on this, but it's actually not all that typical. First, you have a 1/4 inch thread on the bottom. You can actually mount this on a tripod or on a wall mount or anything like that. It has the typical shape and the little brackets, so you can put this on your monitor, but it also has an additional axis right here so that you can really tilt and shape this thing any way you want. Something you're not seeing though is underneath, you can actually unscrew this, and then there's a 1/4 inch thread there, so you can mount the camera itself without this mount at all directly to anything you want. The sensor on this thing is absolutely massive. It is the biggest sensor on any webcam right now, and that includes the Elgato Facecam Pro. It can shoot up to 4K 30, but if you want 60 frames a second, it can shoot 1080 60. And you saw at the beginning, it is an incredibly clear picture. In fact, let's get looking at it some more. So here we are again on the Kiyo Pro Ultra. The field of view leaves something to be desired. I mean, comparing the two, this is me with a 14mm lens, and then this is me with an 82-degree field of view. In an ideal world, I probably would have liked to have seen around 90 degrees, but it's okay. Like, trade-offs, right? It's an 8.3 megapixel camera. Comes with a built-in microphone. I figured by this point, this level of camera, I'm thinking about the Facecam Pro, the original Facecam. We don't need microphones anymore on these things. I wasn't even going to bore you with the test of the mic's quality, but here it is. This is what the mic sounds like. Streamers, content creators, we all have mics. Nobody's using it on the camera, and nobody who's teleconferencing or something like that is using the microphone on the camera to talk when we already have this, because teleconferencers aren't spending this kind of money for this kind of a camera unless they're bananas. Okay, so now we're in Razer Synapse. This is the software for everything that's Razer. When you start up the application, you're going to see this window. You're going to go into the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra, and voila, then we appear in the preview. Now, if this is already activated in OBS or any other program, this isn't going to activate. It's going to look like this. So make sure it's deactivated everywhere else, or that the programs are off or anything like that. Then you can turn the preview on and we're good to go. So we'll look at some important things on the screen here. If you look across the bottom, you're going to see the stats that are currently on here. So you can see I'm set to 1080p. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. One-time zoom. This is our field of view, currently 82 degrees, at an ISO of 100, shutter speed of 1/60, and our digital noise removal, both 2D and 3D are on. We're going to go through all of these settings, so don't you worry. Okay, now if we look on the left, we're going to see we have 3 main tabs here. So camera, processing and image. So under camera, we have our zoom. So you can actually do a zoom and a pan and tilt and all this on here. So if I zoom, you see it's a digital zoom. So now this is how tight in we are. What's interesting about this is as you zoom, you can actually create presets. So right now I'm under 2. If I leave this as my preset, but then I can also utilize this to move around, so I can focus on anything I want specifically. And then if I go between preset 1, preset 2, preset 3, we've got an auto and a manual focus. Underneath the autofocus, you're going to see a few things. So you got a standard and a face mode. So standard's just looking for anything in motion, and it's going to focus on that. You got to be careful if other things are happening in your room. It will search focus. Even if you move around too much, you'll start to get that breathing autofocus. The tracking, you have the passive and the responsive, and the lighting type, you've got standard and stylized. I find at the very least with my daytime set that you don't really see much of anything happen when you change these things, but play with it a little bit in your own setup and see how it works for you. Now, if you do want to go to manual focus, you're just going to click on manual, and then it gets really simple. And if you change your focus, it changes, obviously. So what you want to do is find when you're perfectly in focus, and you might even want to go so far as to zoom in real tight, so then you can see when you are the most in focus. That appears to be about where we want to be. So you've got some room to work with here now. I'm not going to go, like, I got to get pretty close. I mean, I'm touching the camera right now to be a little out of focus. So we're good in this kind of mode. So if I go, back or forth, kind of just in a general way, I'm not going to get out of focus. If you're the kind of streamer who gets up and does a lot of stuff, you're going to want autofocus to be on, because obviously the second I step up and get away from this chair, I'm going to be out of focus. But if you're just going to keep your butt planted right here, the manual focus might be right for you, because you're not going to have to worry about that focus breathing or anything else. Exposure. Now this is a good one. Obviously I've got it set to auto now just to kind of show you what's what. The metering. So average, if I'm going to change this, it's going to find a balance between the brightest spots and the darkest spots. So if I do that, you'll see it brings it up. It actually makes my face pretty hot. I'm a little overexposed here now. I'm always a little overexposed here. It's this. You can't get rid of all of it unless I'm putting a ton of the pancake on it. I'm not doing that. Center a little bit better. It's actually taking kind of this general area and it's just going to expose to that. What I want to do is face. This does have actual face tracking, so it knows to look for this. And now it is exposing my face a lot nicer. It's darker here. It's bright over here. We're going to accept that just because it's daytime and I have a window and there's nothing I can do with that, because my wife won't let me put tinfoil on the windows because they'll think we're nuts. And then from there, you have a little bit of compensation. So if you want to bring your own face up just a little bit more, you can do that. Now, if you want to do the manual exposure, just click manual, obviously. Then you have your ISO settings. So right now it's sitting at 400, but as I go through, I can actually change it and, make it kind of bananas. This is the look. Just go through and find what is right for you. And then your shutter speed. In manual, I just do the old rule of your shutter speed. This number should be twice the size of the frames per second you're going. So if I'm going 60 frames a second, this should be 120. And that just helps from any motion blur or things like that. Under processing, so this is where we select our resolution. Now I did say this is a 4K 30 webcam, so you're like, Joe, why are you using 1080 60? Because 4K 30 doesn't seem to be an option in my software for some reason. I have been working for more than a week with Razer to try and fix this. They've made several suggestions, and it's always the obvious stuff. Hey, are you using the cable we provided you? Yes, I am. Are you plugging this in through a hub or directly into the computer? Directly into the computer? Well, maybe your computer's not powerful enough. Well, here's the thing. I'm reviewing another computer right now, which is what I'm plugged into, and here are the stats. It might actually be the most powerful, personal PC in this entire city right now. So that's not the problem either. So for whatever reason that they can't figure out and I can't figure out, it's just not wanting to give me 4K. Now, the good news is it still looks fantastic. The bad news is I'm just upset because it's not giving me what they promised. MJPEG quality, we have an auto and a manual. Set it to auto. It will reset. When you set a lot of these scenes, it is going to reset for you. So this is what the auto looks like. And you can see it's really overexposed. I'd have to go through and redo all the exposure. So having this set as manual, you can slide around and actually change the quality. So this is for performance, so you can see how poor the quality is in this version, which might be a stylistic thing that you're doing. I could use this camera if I wanted to do a style of kind of a retro video game or something, like I'm doing a Sega CD thing. But if you bring it all the way up, this is another problem I've been having. It doesn't seem to want to be able to handle this very well. So if I back it off just a wee bit, it's all good. Now, I don't know if the hardware or the software is to blame for this. Generally speaking, when it comes to Razer's software, I'd probably blame it, because I usually like their hardware a lot more than I like their software, but I can't really say. There are HDR settings on this. It's supposed to improve your dynamic range. It's going to correct overexposed areas, going to correct underexposed areas. I've not enjoyed this view, which is why it's off right now, but I'll turn it on to show you what it looks like. And this is what it looks like, again, because it's not looking for any one specific thing. It's also, if you'll notice, it's lowered my frames per second. It does warn you that it's going to do that, but you can see that their HDR has otherwise ruined a good picture. So if you look at the noise now, where they've corrected the overexposure and the lights here, it's quite noisy. You're losing a lot of detail kind of over here where it was a little bit darker. I mean, there's a bokeh on it, so it's not that bad, but I do notice a loss of detail there. And then just the overall quality of this picture. I have an Elgato key light on me, and it looks like there's no light on me at all right now, so I'm not particularly happy with that. We're going to turn the HDR off. Much better. I feel like for the HDR to work, you have to be in a much more controlled environment than this, so I'm not going to completely knock it, but obviously it does have its problems. You have lens distortion compensation, so what's going to actually happen here, they're just concerned about kind of things around the edges and that. It's really just going to cut that off, and you're actually going to notice I'm a little more cut in now, and you can notice my field of view is now 72.5 degrees instead of 82 degrees, so we've lost almost 10 degrees of field of view. I don't really recommend this setting at all because it seems to be correcting an issue that doesn't seem to be an issue in the first place, so we're just going to go back. Okay, so low light compensation. I'm in a very well lit room right now. I have a big light on me, but let's turn off the light for a second. So this is what I look like without lighting, by the way. So let's turn on the low light compensation and see what it does for me. And again, it's not doing a whole heck of a lot for me. And I think the reason being is because I have so much light coming in still. So we're not in a low light situation. It's just I don't have a lot of light on my face, but it didn't do anything to correct that. The 2D and 3D noise reduction, I've just always left it on. If you look at their own description of what it does, it's telling you that it's actually improving the image quality in low light scenes, and it's going to reduce a ton of noise. The 2D is going to reduce all the noise in the low light situations. The 3D is going to reduce noise and motion blur. It actually recommends that in a well-lit scenario like this, that you actually turn them off. But here's the problem: when I turn them off, I am still seeing noise. So if you look right over this shoulder here, I'm getting a little bit of a flicker now. If you look kind of in this carpeted area over here, I'm getting a little flicker now. If I turn on just the 2D, that doesn't seem to be helping. And I turn on the 3D and it seems to have gone away. So unless you as the subject are evenly lit with the whole rest of your room, which should never be the case, I would probably just leave these on just to avoid any flicker or anything like that and little spots on your set. And the last thing we're looking at right now is image. So you have image presets here. Just this is your default image, which looks awful right now. The white balance is all off, so I'm very blue on my face. A more cool environment, it warms me up a little bit. This is closer to what we had in the first place. Vibrant didn't fix the white balance, but it fixed the saturation, so I'm still blue, but I have some color on my shirt at least. Warm, nope. So we go custom, and then I can mess around with things a little bit. So an inconsistency I've been finding when I've been playing with these settings, not all the time does changing the value in this box actually change it. It seems to be doing it right now, but what I have been doing is just using the slider because A, it's easier to use, and B, it literally just was the only thing that was working, and it's still the only thing that works sometimes. But from here, you can change your brightness, your contrast, and your saturation. You can look like this if you really want to. White balance here, so you can see I'm kind of in the cooler, but not all the way cool, and warm, just too warm. You can set this to auto, which would probably work fine. Again, in a more controlled environment where I didn't have sunlight and stuff coming in, if I was in a room without windows, it would probably work out just fine, but because it's actually compensating for light that's coming in, I can't really mess with that. So I turn that off and I just have to find what looks most natural for me. So anti-flicker, we have 60 hertz and 50 hertz settings here. Watermark might be the dumbest thing that I've seen on this. All we've done is put Razer's branding on our shot. I can't imagine a single person doing this outside of somebody doing promotion for Razer. But if you're so inclined, you could use the settings here to move the watermark to wherever you want. So I can move it up to the top left. Now it's up here. Don't. And then the last thing here, you can mirror video. So I can just do this. Oh my God, that's what I look like. I don't know who needs this, because A, this is not how any person would see me if they saw me on the street. We're all unbalanced and asymmetrical in our own way. Some people a little more unbalanced than others, but I don't need this. I'm a big boy. I can figure out what hand I'm putting up at what given time when I'm on camera. See, like, it doesn't confuse me that my right hand is up, but then when I'm facing it, I see my left hand on camera. Maybe I'm an old man and experience has just afforded this to me, but it's not a problem. I think it's another setting that solves a problem that nobody seems to have. When you've made changes though, make sure that you save here. It is actually capable of saving the settings to not just your Synapse, but also to your camera, so that you don't have to keep resetting it. And more importantly, you don't have to keep opening up this program. Once you set it, you should be able to just not worry about Synapse anymore and just worry about OBS or whatever program that you're using. And believe me, once you get Razer Synapse out of your life, life gets a whole heck of a lot better. But now comes the big question, because we're looking at the two things side by side. On the left, you're looking at the Sony a7 III. On the right, you're looking at the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra. And while yes, I certainly like the picture of the Sony a7 III a lot more, and while yes, the Sony a7 III has so many advantages, I can put on any lens I want, so I can have any field of view I want. The color accuracy is so much better, the detail is better, but now we're talking about a price thing. The Sony and the lens and all that gonna run you around $2,000. The Kiyo Pro Ultra is gonna run you $300 US. And I think that a budget smart content creator, especially somebody if you're just gonna be streaming or something like that, there's nothing wrong with using the Kiyo Pro Ultra as your main camera on a stream. I wouldn't have a problem seeing it for a YouTube video either. It looks good full screen, so it's gonna look great when you cut it down for a face cam or something like that, because that's been a major concession of most webcams I've been reviewing lately is, yeah, you can't really use it full screen, but I mean, if you're only gonna use it on the side anyways, it's gonna look fine. This has everything you need to be your main camera. Does it have problems? Yeah, tons. And it's all surrounding Razer's software. That has been a theme with their products going back years now. I get the sentiment about having one place where you want to control all of your brand's devices. That's cool, but it's not working. It seems that every single part of the program has some kind of deficiency. I'd frankly be happy for this to just be a plug-and-play camera. When you see Elgato's Camera Hub software and you see how well that actually works with its hardware, and then you see the kind of discrepancies in here, and there's a lot of inconsistencies that I didn't even get to show you just because they didn't happen this time. But that's the problem. I would rather the same thing happen over and over again so I know how to compensate for it, rather than have an unpredictable software that's just going to kind of do whatever it wants whenever I touch it. So if you're on the fence about this camera because you want to wait and see if the software gets a little better, I would honestly just move on, because it's going to be a really long time before that happens. But the picture quality speaks for itself. So where do you sit in this balance? Does the picture quality make it worth having the kind of worse software, knowing that if you get all that stuff set up, you probably don't have to touch it again? Or do you want to be able to go in there and be able to reliably tweak those settings whenever you want, which, you know, is fair? And I want to know, what kind of camera is this to you? Is this going to be your starter camera, the first one you buy for your stream? Is this going to be the kind of camera that sits between maybe a starter one like a C920 and then an eventual end game of a mirrorless camera? Or is this it? Like, this is, I started with something else, I'm gonna get this, and then I'm good forever. Let me know all that stuff down in the comments. And while you're down there, make sure you hit the like and subscribe, hit the bell so you know when I have new videos coming out and when I have streams coming up. I've been streaming a lot on here. I've also been streaming a lot on my gaming channel, Miscast Plays, so make sure that you go and sub there. Hit the bell on there too if you want to come and just hang out. And if you're not done with this Joe train yet and you want to see some more, why don't you check out these videos right here? Ooh, I like that one a lot. That one, no, I'm kidding. They're both fantastic. Go check them out. And until next time, gang, let's get to work.